Today we're going to be looking at the opening of the play, the prologue spoken by the chorus. The chorus has its origins in Greek tragedy, where simply its role was to narrate, comment and interpret from a point of view outside the action of the play. In the Renaissance it was fairly rare and almost always confined to a prologue. It seems that Marlowe was quite fond of using them this way, but on the other hand in his brief career he only wrote 5, perhaps 6 plays. So, moving on to looking at the text itself. The chorus starts fairly generally by setting the scene. This isn't, as it says, going to be a play about great kings and battles. Now, looking at this again in the context of studying Shakespearean tragedy with the lower sixth, I'm wondering if Marlowe is a little ahead of his time here. Although Renaissance tragedy didn't stick slavishly to Aristotle's theories of tragedy, many of them did nonetheless obey his notion that tragedy needed to be elevated somewhat. Tragedy should not be about everyday characters. Just to remind you of some examples from Shakespeare, Othello, remember, is a distinguished army general, Hamlet is Prince of Denmark, Romeo and Juliet belong to noble families. Faustus isn't. The play does fit other structural requirements. He does, for example, go from high to low degree, to use Chaucer's definition of tragedy in the Canterbury Tales, but he is base of stock, low born. Now, please do not go down the whole Faustus equals Marlowe route. That's going much too far, but it's interesting to note the parallels between their lives. The son of a shoemaker from Canterbury, a scholarship to the King's School and thence to Cambridge. Is Faustus then an everyman figure? We'll see. Anyway, we sense a note of admiration perhaps. Despite being born base of stock, Faustus has excelled at the famous University of Wittenberg. Though contextually this was associated with scepticism and questioning, perhaps the location is irrelevant. Remember, for example, our day at the Globe, where we heard that when Shakespeare set a play in Vienna or Rome, he really meant London. Similar, I imagine, to Marlowe. Now, the chorus does not condemn learning itself. Universities, as we spoke about, were perhaps viewed with a little suspicion. So Cambridge, for example, became a hotbed of Puritanism later on. And some scholars, meeting in groups to discuss religion and astronomy, were accused of witchcraft and devil worship. There was a sense that such discussions were in danger of leading people to atheism and rebellion against authority. However, phrases such as fruitful plot of scholarism and heavenly matters of theology clearly do not offer any condemnation. But it is Faustus's necromancy that is beyond the pale. So the condemnation of this is unambiguous. It is a devilish exercise. This adjective, of course, prefigures the appearance of devils themselves, and it is cursed. And all of this happens because of Faustus's own sin. The chorus identifies what we can call his hamartia, his tragic flaw or tragic mistake. Very clearly it says he was swollen with cunning of a self-conceit. Now, there are 2 key images in the passage in front of you, which I hope you remember. The first one is the recurrent language suggesting gluttony. So we've got swollen, glutted, surfeits. Imagery suggesting a greed going beyond what is natural, beyond what is healthy. So what of this moralising? This kind of point of view affects our perceptions of Faustus from the outset. Linking to our area of study, it seems to prove that Gothic texts are fundamentally conservative. Characters may rebel against an established order, hierarchy or value system, but ultimately all transgressions are punished and society reasserts itself. Let's move on then to the second key image, the classical allusion to the story of Icarus. His waxen wings did mount above his reach, in the second line in front of you. Okay, he shouldn't have done it. Icarus shouldn't have gone too near the sun. Silly boy. But again, I don't want to spend too long going into this, but surely if we read the ancient Greek story, we might sympathise with Icarus. Is there not a note of regret in this myth? a note of wistfulness, a sense of loss. I mean, he is memorialised forever to this day. The Icarian Sea, part of the Mediterranean, bears his name. Linking back to the Gothic, and something that is much more prominent, openly so, in Frankenstein, is the notion of the Promethean hero. We'll talk more about that later on. And as ever with Marlowe, there are other darker ideas introduced. Notice the line, "and melting heavens conspired his overthrow." Conspired. For Icarus, by the way, the heavens and the gods had nothing to do with it. He got too near the sun and his wings melted. But what is Marlowe implying here? Now, conspired has two meanings. Google it. One is in the sense of many events coinciding, coming together to produce a bad outcome. And the other is the sense of some kind of malevolent plotting. Is Faustus predestined to damnation? This would be entirely correct, according to Calvinism. But more than this, what impression are we getting of God, of religion, of Christianity? This is one of the most uncomfortable questions to ask of Dr. Faustus, and we'll see more of it later on. As well as introducing the story and ideas of the play, the prologue introduces many of its most searching questions.